He was intelligent, charming, and dangerous. Henry VIII, a king who changed the course of history not for power, but for a son. Obsessed with securing a male heir, he defied the Pope, broke away from Rome, and watched his kingdom tear apart. Henry's relentless pursuit of a son reshaped England's future. His 6 marriages, each one more tumultuous than the last, marked his reign with scandal, heartbreak, and betrayal. The king who executed wives, tore apart his family, and rewrote the laws of the land, all in the name of securing his dynasty. It wasn't just about power, it was about legacy. A legacy he would go to any lengths to secure. In breaking with the Catholic Church, Henry created the Church of England, forever changing the religious landscape. His actions ignited political and religious upheaval, with consequences that echoed through generations. The king who reshaped England's history, leaving a trail of chaos, a new religion, and a single heir. This is the tale of Henry VIII, the king who changed the world for a son. World still recovering from conflict, a kid named Henry was born in 1491. The throne was meant for his older brother Arthur, the heir to the crown. Henry, the younger son, was a lively and talented child, fluent in several languages, passionate about music, and loved by his instructors. He was the perfect spare, full of energy and promise. But fate had different plans. When Arthur died suddenly, the course of Henry's life was altered forever. At just 17, he found himself thrust into the role of monarch. To solidify his claim to the throne, Henry married Catherine of Aragon, his brother's widow, and began his reign. He was tall, handsome, and charismatic, the quintessential Renaissance prince. The people adored him, and for a time, England seemed to glitter under his rule. But beneath his confident smile, Henry carried a heavy burden. The Tudor dynasty was still new, and without a male heir, the kingdom's future was uncertain. The fear of his legacy crumbling would haunt him for years, pushing him down a path of decisions that would alter England and history forever. At the start, Henry was everything a king should be: bold, generous, and filled with hope for his reign. He surrounded himself with scholars, musicians, and grand competitions. His court was a vibrant and colorful spectacle, brimming with life and energy. Catherine of Aragon, elegant and wise, seemed the perfect match for him. Together, they symbolized England's recovery from years of turmoil. In those early years, Henry even earned the title Defender of the Faith after penning a book that fiercely defended the Catholic Church. Their marriage was a public display of unity, stability, and promise. But amid the celebrations of jousts and the laughter echoing through the banquets, a single question lingered in Henry's mind. Where is the son? Catherine's repeated pregnancies ended in heartbreak, with only one child surviving, Mary. For Henry, the birth of a daughter was a blow, a sign of instability and weakness in his dynasty. Each silent cradle carried with it a whisper of failure. Desperation grew with every prayer unanswered. Henry's dream of securing a male heir consumed him, and with each passing year, that longing grew deeper. Then everything changed. Anne Boleyn, a striking young woman, arrived at court. Though not considered beautiful by modern standards, she possessed an undeniable magnetism. Bold, intellectual, and unlike any woman Henry had ever encountered, she captivated him in ways he couldn't ignore. Anne demanded marriage, something no one else had ever dared to do, and refused to remain his mistress. Her defiance only fueled his obsession. Henry, now deeply torn, was convinced that his marriage to Catherine was a divine punishment. He believed their union had been cursed and petitioned the Pope to annul it. But Rome refused. Emperor Charles V, Catherine's powerful nephew, controlled the Pope. and he would not allow his aunt's marriage to be dismissed. Caught between his burning desire for Anne and the refusal of the Pope, Henry found himself at a crossroads. His yearning for a male heir and his infatuation with Anne pushed him to a drastic decision. He would break with the Catholic Church, an act of defiance that would reverberate across Europe. This choice would not only change his life, but reshape the future of England and the world. Henry's world was shattered when the Church rejected him. In his defiance, he dismantled the centuries-old connection between England and Rome. With the help of Archbishop Cranmer and his ruthless advisor Thomas Cromwell, Henry sought the power he believed was rightfully his. Parliament passed the Act of Supremacy, declaring Henry the supreme head of the Church of England, severing ties with the Pope forever. But it wasn't just rebellion, it was a revolution. Priests no longer took vows before the Pope, but before Henry himself. The monasteries, which had stood for centuries, were dissolved, their wealth and power stripped away. Even Sir Thomas More, once a trusted ally, was executed for refusing to accept Henry's new religious order. Henry had torn apart the very fabric of the Catholic Church in England, all in the name of love. With Anne Boleyn at his side, crowned queen, it seemed like a moment of triumph. Yet, as the church bells rang in celebration, the weight of his actions began to settle. The repercussions of his defiance were already being felt throughout the kingdom. England had changed forever. In 1533, Anne Boleyn gave birth. As Henry waited outside the chamber, his heart raced, hoping for a son. But then came the crushing words, "It's a girl, Elizabeth." Brilliant and healthy, but not the son he desperately needed. Henry held on to hope, believing another chance would come, but it never did. Anne's sharp wit, once a beacon of charm, became her weapon and her curse. The pressure of multiple miscarriages, coupled with the rise of political adversaries, began to unravel her position. Once a close ally, Thomas Cromwell turned against her, sensing an opportunity to gain favor with the king. In 1536, Anne was charged with treason and adultery. False accusations, but nonetheless carried weight. The political tide had shifted, and her fate was sealed. With remarkable composure, Anne ascended the scaffold at the Tower of London on a May morning. In an instant, she vanished from the world, a victim of power, love, and ambition. Henry, the man who had once defied the Pope for her, ordered her erasure, removing her from history as if she had never been there. A new chapter of devastation unfolded after Anne's death. Henry, with Cromwell at his side, turned his focus to the monasteries. Centuries-old places of worship and charity were stripped of their riches, their ancient manuscripts burned, and their monks scattered. The once thriving religious institutions that had been pillars of England's faith and charity were erased in a ruthless campaign to increase the king's wealth and power. As Henry's fortunes grew, England grew restless. The people, particularly in the north, could not forget the old faith. In 1536, they rose in rebellion during the Pilgrimage of Grace, marching under holy banners in an attempt to restore Catholicism. What began as a movement of piety turned into a bloodbath. Henry, despite initial promises of leniency, authorized mass executions. Thousands were slaughtered in the name of royal authority. The betrayal was among the bloodiest in English history. It became clear, disobey the king, and you would die. Henry had transformed his kingdom into a place of fear, where terror and loyalty were measured in blood. His quest for power had silenced any opposition, and England would never be the same. Just days after Anne's execution, Henry married Jane Seymour. Her calm and gentle nature soothed his restless heart, offering the stability and peace he had longed for. A year later, Jane gave him what he had fought so desperately for, a son, Edward. The bells of England rang in celebration, and for the first time in years, the future of the Tudor dynasty seemed secure. But the happiness was short-lived. Jane, after the long labor, succumbed to complications from childbirth. Henry's joy turned to profound grief. In that moment, he was no longer the powerful king. He was simply a broken man. For months, he refused to wear anything but black, mourning the wife who had finally given him his heir. Jane, the woman who had granted him his most cherished wish, was the only one Henry would choose to be buried next to. It was as if the weight of his own desires, the destruction of everything for the sake of a son, finally took its toll. In that moment, Henry understood the price of his relentless pursuit. He had the son he had dreamed of, but at what cost? Time had hardened Henry. Power, once his driving force, was now his only companion. His desire for love and legacy still burned, but nothing could fill the void. When Cromwell arranged a marriage with Anne of Cleves, a German princess, Henry was initially impressed by her portrait. But upon meeting her, he was horrified. "I like her not," he declared. Within months, the marriage was annulled, and Cromwell, once a trusted ally, was executed as punishment for the failed match. Henry's ego was reignited by Catherine Howard, a youthful beauty who seemed to restore his pride. Yet, like Anne, Catherine's affairs led her to the same grim fate. She was executed for adultery, leaving Henry once again betrayed. As Henry aged, his body deteriorated, his temper worsened, and his reign became marked by fear. His court turned into a dark, deadly theater. Please the king, and you lived. Offend him, and you died. His search for love and affection continued, but it was never successful. The king, once a young and radiant prince, had become a man ruled by power, fear, and relentless desire. A king who couldn't stop, even as his body and kingdom crumbled. By the 1540s, Henry was a shadow of the youthful prince he had once been. His body had grown swollen with obesity, and festering wounds on his legs made it painful for him to move. His once proud posture was now weighed down by physical decay. But his pride, unyielding as ever, refused to break. In his desperate pursuit of short-lived glory, Henry drained England's coffers by waging expensive wars against France and Scotland, further straining his kingdom. The monarch who had once been golden in the eyes of his people now turned his rage on everyone, attacking old friends, clergy, and even noblemen. His last wife, Catherine Parr, was a calm and compassionate survivor, one who outlived him and tamed his fury in his final years. But when Henry looked into mirrors, all he saw was a man destroyed by his own ambition, not the godlike king he once believed himself to be. The laughter, the music, the force of his reign, all faded into the hollow whispers of regret. His once great kingdom, now governed by fear and remorse, was a far cry from the vibrant court he had once ruled. In 1547, Henry VIII passed away, surrounded by the empire he had both created and destroyed. His son Edward was gravely ill, and the chaos Henry had sown in his relentless pursuit of power would ripple through the future. The kingdom he left behind was fractured, its stability uncertain, and the weight of his decisions would fall to his daughters, Mary and Elizabeth. Yet, despite the tumult, Henry's shadow lingered. His break from Rome had given birth to the Church of England, a testament to his defiance. Over time, his navy would come to rule the seas, establishing England as a dominant force. The greatest irony, however, lay in the fact that his most successful heir was not a son, but his daughter, Elizabeth. She would bring England into an age of unparalleled splendor and prosperity, a reign that would define the country for centuries. Henry, who had spent his life molding the world for a son, left behind a legacy far greater than he could have ever imagined. Through suffering, faith, and fire, he laid the foundation for modern-day England, a kingdom shaped by his ambition yet ultimately defined by the strength of a woman's rule. Henry VIII is remembered not just as a monarch, but as a cautionary tale. A man who sought to shape destiny, but ultimately destroyed much of what he sought to preserve. He tore a nation apart in pursuit of a future that never materialized. Yet from the ashes, a new world emerged. Perhaps this is the true nature of power, the illusion that we control our own fate. If you were in Henry's shoes, would you have made the same choices? Would you risk your soul, betray those you love, and challenge the very church to protect your reputation? What do you think? Was Henry VIII a villain or a visionary? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this tale of a man who reshaped history, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories of leaders who left their mark on the world. Because every empire, every reign, begins with one unachievable decision.